During the final decades of the 19th century, Japan appreciated the dynamic American culture enough to share an enthusiasm for baseball, marching band music, and the songs of Stephen Foster. American intellectuals and artists were fascinated by Japan's unique forms of theater, such as No, Kabuki, and Bunraku. Ernest Fenollosa translated No plays into English. Japanese woodblock prints inspired painters such as James McNeill Whistler, whose radical work reflected a preference for concision and for the carefully designed, all-encompassing moment, most notably in his great Peacock Room. And David Belasco would write a tragic drama called Madame Butterfly, about a doomed love affair between an American sailor and a geisha. The play hinted at the deep psychological differences between the two cultures, differences that were plainly evident in the mainstream art of each nation. According to Lafcadio Hearn, an American writer who had moved to Japan and married a Japanese woman, Japanese art reflected the perception of natural law in form and color, the perception of natural law in change, and the sense of life made harmonious by social order and by self-expression. But American art reflected the thirst for pleasure and the unamiable qualities which are indispensable to success in the competitive struggle. In 1873, missionaries were again welcome in Japan, though it was clear to nearly everyone that conversions were superficial and that the political advantages were immediate. That same year, a Japanese delegation visited the United States for 7 months. They were impressed by the importance of the Constitution, by the government's involvement in growth, and by the importance of education. Their only embarrassment was a formal occasion where they wore traditional silk garments, which made them feel feminine. This would not happen again. As one member would write, they would let the gravity of their dusky visages command respect. They would not be as foolish as the American Indians, who were told to love their enemy. They would trust their military instead, beginning with a new policy of universal conscription. By most historical judgments, 1890 represented the beginning of a new world. American historian Frederick Jackson Turner delivered his seminal lecture on the end of the frontier and the need for Americans to redirect this core impulse. Edward Bellamy published a novel entitled Looking Backward, where he described the loss of an Arcadian ideal in the smoke and turbines of the industrial age. In Japan, the crossroads were equally profound. On February 12, 1889, a constitution was ratified, the first of its kind in Asian history. The resulting ceremony astonished both Westerners and Japanese in its grandeur and national feeling. A new state orthodoxy centered around the emperor was created. Japan succeeded in grafting a dominant traditional impulse onto a modern Western concept. But the triumph was fraught with contradiction. The Constitution provided little protection for the average citizen or politician from the will of the emperor or the military. Beneath the veil of representational government, it reaffirmed the ancient mystical powers of the divine emperor. This was not lost on Meiji, who would make fewer and fewer public appearances. He commissioned his portrait, and when it was finally completed to Meiji's satisfaction, it became the template for public consumption. If there were fears of public unrest, they were set aside by the assassination of the Minister of Education, Mori Arinori, who was known for his westernizing policies. While his death was deplored in the press, popular sentiment quickly shifted to his murderer, who was an emperor-worshipping samurai. The true ambitions of the emperor were revealed 5 years later, when an uprising in Korea became a pretext for war with China. The military advisor at the time was Prussian, and he advised the emperor that Japan needed Korea for security and that their enemy was Russia. Meiji also remembered that one of the great Tokugawa shoguns had defined Japan's manifest destiny as the absorption of Korea and the Great Plains of northern China, known as Manchuria. Meiji bestowed 4,000 gallons of sake and 800,000 cigarettes on the troops, who then crushed the Chinese army. The victory in 1895 was hailed as Japan's moment of international recognition. Henceforth, the West would call us as we call ourselves, Nippon, which means the rising sun, and there will be no more Japan or Japs.